Hi everybody, this is David again with some instructions for doing single cell image segmentation. So continuing from the previous video, what I'd like to do in this video is provide some examples of how you should use the three-dimensional context to segment cells that are next to each other. So if you've done any of the previous cell segmentation jobs, then you'll know how to deal with images like this one in the center, where if you have here 1, 2, 3, and 4 cells that are right next to each other, you would label them cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, and cell 4. And you should continue to do this in this job, but what you should recognize is that, one, these cells are going to exist in multiple frames. So if we were to say this one here is cell number 2, then it should be labeled cell number 2 in this frame, 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 and so on. The second thing that you should be aware of is that just like cells can be right next to each other in this two-dimensional image, when we're looking across a three-dimensional image stack, cells can be on top of each other as well. And when this happens, those two cells should be given separate labels. So an example of this can be seen here. So as we move from left to right, we'll see right around here, like the faint ghost of some cells appear. And here's right about the first frame where we identify cell number 1. And so as we move to the right, it'll become more and more apparent. And here we can see the same cell, but we can see off to the left, it looks like there's another object that's just starting to come into view. And so what we would do is, even though it looks like this object is lying on top, what we should do is label this object number 1, and then label this over here object number 2. And so as we continue to move, we'll see these objects become more and more into focus, and we should continue to use that three-dimensional context to identify, hey, this is object number 1, and over here, this is object number 2. Now, as things are really in focus, the separation between the objects becomes more and more clear until they start to fade away. Okay, so those are two examples of how you should use the three-dimensional context to segment the data. So one, when you give cells a label, you should apply that same label throughout all the frames that cell exists in. And two, you should use the three-dimensional context to give cells that might be lying on top of each other separate labels. All right, thanks for listening.